What's up guys, and welcome to another Backpacking 101 video. Today I'll be talking about how to minimize your biggest expenses on any kind of backpacking trip. So by far the three biggest expenses that most backpackers will run into on any kind of trip are going to be transportation, accommodation, and food. Learning how to minimize these three expenses will definitely help you extend your stay in wherever you are and will help you stretch out your budget as much as possible. So debatably the biggest expense you'll run into on any kind of trip is going to be transportation. And that means, flights, ferries, trains, taxis, buses, whatever you name it. And flights usually being the most expensive one, considering if you have to fly overseas or if it's a very long ways away. And the best way I've found to reduce the amount of money that you spend on flights is by using platforms such as Skyscanner, Momodo, Kayak, Google Flights. All these search engines are great ways to find cheap flights. You will definitely save a lot more money if you book a round trip from the same city from, say, your hometown to a big hub in, say, Europe, and then flying from that city back to your hometown. So by far my favorite platform that I use when I'm trying to find flights is Skyscanner. Skyscanner also has the option to search for flights from one city to another city for an entire month. So you can actually see exactly where or when is the cheapest time to fly from A to B, and that will help you plan out your trip. Say if you want to get from Bangkok to Ho Chi Minh City, I will usually either wait a day or two if it's going to save me a lot more money than if I were to leave a few days ahead of time. Other platforms like Google Flights, Kayak, and Momodo are all really good as well. They pretty much offer the same thing, but I think Skyscanner is just a bit more intuitive, and I've definitely found way cheaper flights on Skyscanner for the most part. And I'm not going to talk about travel cards on this video, but I definitely will talk about them in a video in the future. Okay, so the next biggest expense you'll probably run into on your trip is going to be accommodation. And by far the best way to avoid spending money on accommodation is by staying with friends. So this might seem very obvious, but if you have friends in a city that you're visiting or traveling to, reach out to them and be like, hey, can we crash on your couch? Or hey, can I use a spare bedroom? Because this will definitely save you money on hostels or hotels or whatever you're doing. So this last summer, I was able to travel around Europe for 2 months on a relatively cheap budget simply because I was staying with people I knew from each city. And I kind of tailored where I was going to who I knew in each city as well. So if I had a friend in Madrid or a friend in Berlin, I would have most likely chosen to go there over another spot just because it's going to help you save money, and also you can go visit your friend and you can get like a local tour guide as well. So definitely the second best option for saving money and accommodation, if you don't know someone in the city you're going to, which tends to be most of us, is going to be staying in hostels. And hostels are usually quite cheap and they are a great way to meet people, and I have made an entire video about it right here. So please go watch that if you haven't. But if you don't already know, hostels are a great way to save money. And hostels also will bring people together so that you can do fun things as a group, and that will also save you money because getting from A to B by a taxi is a lot more expensive if you're by yourself versus if you're with 3 or 4 friends that you just met in the hostel. Another option to save money on accommodation is going to be using the platform called Couchsurfing. And if you don't know about Couchsurfing, it's basically you can go to a city and literally just join an online community of people who are hosting, and they're letting people sleep on their couch for free. And it's pretty fun. Like if you get a good host, they can show you around the city. They're usually pretty nice, but I've heard some horror stories about people couch surfing. Most of the time girls and guys being creepy to girls that they're hosting. So if you're a solo traveler and you're not super confident, this may not be the best option for you. But for the most part, I've had pretty good experiences couch surfing, so I don't see why you wouldn't either. And the last tip I have for you in order to stretch your budget the most for accommodation is going to be staying in Airbnbs. And if you're by yourself, this may not be the case. It may be way more expensive than, say, a hostel or couch surfing. But if you are with friends from back home or friends that you meet traveling, this will actually tend to save you money because you're sharing an entire house. And if you split that house down the middle between 5 or 6 people, you will probably save more money than if you were to spend per night for a dorm room for a 1 bunk bed. And this is also kind of better because you get your own room usually, you get your own bathroom, you get your own kitchen with a bunch of people that you were traveling with, so it tends to be more fun as well once you meet a good group of people. So I've definitely opted for this option many times, but you have to have a group with you or it doesn't really work. Okay, so after transportation and accommodation, the last biggest budget eater is going to be food. And everyone loves to eat, but food tends to be expensive, especially in Europe. You usually can't find that much street food in Europe, but if you are in a place like here in Thailand, Southeast Asia, street food actually is the best food. It's the most tasteful, it's the local food, the local cuisine, and it's a lot cheaper than if you were to eat in a restaurant. So if you're not scared to eat on the street, which you shouldn't be as long as you play by the rules and you don't eat anything that's sitting out, or don't eat anything that you haven't seen cooked yourself, then you should be fine. And a lot of times this is a way better experience than, you know, going into a restaurant and having a sit down meal, which tends to be a lot more expensive than if you are to just go into like a night market or a street market and buy your own food there. So right now I'm in Thailand, and I would say the average street meal will cost you about 60 baht, which will in US cost you less than $2, which is pretty crazy considering how much food costs back home. But an entire meal will cost you less than $2 here if you eat on the street. If you eat in a restaurant, that can, you know, go up to more Western prices like, you know, $10, $15. But if you eat on the street, they tend to be better meals and also way cheaper. Okay, and the last tip I have for you about how to save money while eating food when you're traveling is gonna be obviously just to eat in. You know, most hostels will have a kitchen ready for you to go, fully prepared, fully stocked, and you just gotta buy your own food, bring it to the kitchen and prepare it yourself. The amount of pasta that I ate in Europe was crazy because I didn't want to eat out all the time because it was killing my budget. So just try to book a hostel in advance if you know that you want to eat in that has a kitchen ready to go. Sometimes hostels won't have kitchens, and that'll be a big bummer if you show up and you have a bunch of food ready to go and then all of a sudden there's no kitchen there. Just make sure you look into that in advance. I've personally saved a lot of money by following the tips that I was just talking about, especially when it comes to transportation. Finding cheap flights is a must. By saving money on transportation, food, and accommodation, you will definitely be extending your budget. So if you felt you learned something today about how to properly extend your budget, please give this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.